Miss Hala Fariz, Miss Ambassador Hala Fariz, very welcome to this seminar about Palestine's application to UN for state membership. Very welcome.
Thank you very much, and I thank you all for coming this morning to listen to me leaving this beautiful sunny morning outside. But I'm honored and I'm very grateful that I have been invited and to have the chance so that I can hear you and you can hear me and ask me all the questions that you like. In fact, today, these days are very special as we commemorate so many important things for our people. First and foremost, I would like to mention the commemoration of 7 years of the passing away of our great leader, Yasser Arafat. And when we say Yasser Arafat, we talk about the story of the Palestinian people, the story of the Palestinian struggle, first to be recognized as a people, and these people fighting for their rights, for their existence, for their national identity, and Yasser Arafat was about all of this. And in this regard, I would also, I would not forget to mention that Sweden was the first country in Europe which opened the door for Yasser Arafat, and through Sweden, Europe was opened for him and for our people, and for awareness of what was going on, of the historical injustice that befell our people in 1948. And so, as we remember Yasser Arafat, we also remember 1974, when he stood at the United Nations to talk about the rights of the Palestinian people for self-determination and for an independent state of their own, and also about the refugees who were forcefully thrown out of their country, of their homes, of their culture, a whole society that was dismembered as a result of the creation of Israel in those days, and again echoed by our president Mahmoud Abbas just about a month and a half ago at the United Nations. So many memories November brings to us. And then again we have the 15th of November in 1988, when the historical compromise was arrived at, whereby the Palestinian leadership decided to accept the two-state solution, and we recognized the right of Israel to exist, but also for us to have our independent state alongside Israel, where we can coexist and live in peace. That was done also by Yasser Arafat when he declared the independence, or he announced the Declaration of Independence. And 23 years have passed, and we have not yet achieved that independence, but we are on the right track. So, because there was no establishment of an independent state, the United Nations in 1977, through a resolution that was passed, declared the 29th of November an International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. Now, why the 29th of November? Because in 1947, there was a resolution by the United Nations that decided to divide Palestine into two states. One which came to be, which is Israel, and the other one which never until today came into being, which is the Palestinian state. So in order to first recognize the right of the Palestinian people to have their independent state, and in order to for the people all around the world to help the Palestinian people achieve this goal that is rightfully theirs. That is why the 29th of November, the date of that resolution back in 1947, was announced an international day whereby people should be commemorating, but also dedicating for awareness and for more support and help for the Palestinian people until the day that we achieve our independence. So all of this brings us to the point, this point in time in September, when President Mahmoud Abbas presented the application for the full membership of Palestine to the United Nations. Of course, there has been a lot of developments throughout the decades. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of why we decided, why the leadership decided to apply for full membership. Of course, Palestine gained its observer status first as PLO and then as Palestine in 1988. We have started or embarked on a peace process, starting with the Madrid Conference in 1991. What happened during those 20 years proved to us and proved to the international community as well that Israel does not really want peace. Israel is working hard to solidify, to strengthen the occupation by means of building more and more settlements, eating up the land, which by now about 50% of the West Bank has been annexed because of the wall that was built and because of the settlements that are still being built and expanded, despite the numerous UN resolutions and despite the fact that building settlements on occupied territory is a violation of international law, and yet Israel continues with this enterprise and continues claiming that it wants peace and it wants us to have a Palestinian independent state. And so we ask, where shall we have that state? Soon enough, we will not have either the land or the possibility of a contiguous state. Now, having said that, we also have to remember that since the Oslo agreements, it was supposed to be a a safe passage between the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Now, why we say that? Because geographically speaking, these two areas are in between comes Israel because of its occupation. Because in 1948, or as a result of the partition plan, Israel was not supposed to occupy all of that area. It was supposed to have around less than 50% of the total area of historic Palestine. And then in 1967, it occupied the West Bank and Gaza Strip, totaling 78% of historic Palestine. So we have this peculiar setup whereby Israel is in the middle between the West Bank and Gaza Strip, and it has worked hard throughout the years to not to allow a free and safe passage for Palestinians between these two regions, I would say, of the same. I mean, it's just one territory that is where our independent state is supposed to be. I should say that there were many proposals and many decisions and many resolutions. I will just mention a few that we have accepted. One of them is the Arab Initiative for Peace, in which it was stated that the Arab countries will normalize relations with Israel after it ends its occupation to all the territory, the Arab land, the Arab territory occupied in 1967. That means the Palestinian and Syrian and Lebanese territory, which was occupied in 1967. And it also talked about the right of the Palestinian refugees to return. Not only the Arab states accepted this peace initiative, but also 56 states, that includes all the Islamic states as well, were prepared after Israel terminates its occupation and acknowledges the right of the refugees to have normal relations with Israel. Now, unfortunately, this was totally ignored and rejected. There were other proposals, the roadmap, which came into being, which was put forward by the United States, the EU, and Russia, as well as the UN, and later on it was decided to adopt it as a UN resolution. Now, what does that roadmap say to Israel? First and foremost, stop settlements. Stop building settlements. That was number one. There were other obligations that Israel was supposed to implement. We had other obligations that we implemented to the letter, all of them. Israel implemented none of its obligations, and so the negotiations, or what was always referred to as the peace process, became a process without any peace or negotiations. Why? Because in order to have a meaningful process or meaningful negotiations, the two parties have to have agreed on the terms of reference. What are we negotiating about? What is the goal? Where do we go? We are going from point A to point B. Point A, we know it. We have differences, we have occupation, etc., etc. Point B should be acknowledged, at least by the occupier, by the occupying power, which is Israel. So far, there is no acknowledgement. There is only lip service for the two-state solution. But on the ground, more and more settlements are being built. New conditions are being put forward by Israel, which are not acceptable even by the international community. And so at that point, it was our duty, the leadership felt that it was its duty to preserve our rights, especially that our right to self-determination is an inalienable right, and it was never on the table for negotiations. We were negotiating how Israel should end its occupation, but we never negotiate our right to self-determination and the rest of our inalienable rights. So in that context, and with the support of the majority of the international community for our goal, which is to end occupation and to have our independence, we went to the UN and applied for membership. And of course, we realized that by doing that, and even when we get, if we get membership this time, we will not have ended the occupation. I mean, we will not have gotten rid of the occupation, rather, or the settlements. However, we would have preserved our rights, and we have to go on, and with the help of our friends and all over the world, we will have to go on trying to reach to a point where there is recognition of the need to sit down and talk about all the outstanding issues between us and Israelis. Now, this means that we acknowledge the need to go back to negotiations, but then we will be a state recognized by the majority of this international community, and we then have to sit down and talk about refugees, Palestinian refugees, and talk about water, and talk about our prisoners, of whom we still have 5,000 right now, and by the way, Israel releases some and continues to imprison others. So we have also the issue of settlements. We have 5 or 6 outstanding issues, including the borders, that we will need to sit and negotiate all about. So we have a long way to go. And as I said when I started, as much as we appreciate your support, your solidarity, and we think that it is very noble of the Swedish people to continue to support us and to continue both on the level of civil societies and solidarity groups, and also on the part of the official Sweden, or the government, that support us both politically and economically. We value this, and we need this, and we will never forget the 2009 EU statement by the foreign ministers, and at the time this was under Sweden's presidency of the EU, when that statement talked about all of our rights. It talked about an independent state along the borders of 1967, talked about East Jerusalem. It talked about the Palestinian refugees. It talked about all the elements that are necessary for a peaceful and fair settlement of this conflict. Now, we have stated time and again that what we believe in, it is our right to resist occupation, and right now, at this juncture, we have chosen peaceful resistance, and there are many, many ways that we will continue to resist this occupation, and we will continue to demand our rights. And for this, we do appreciate your support and your solidarity, and we still need it. Thank you very much.
About the US, which of course now is starting its campaign, Obama is starting his election campaign, so I'm afraid it's not good news maybe for the Palestinian cause. But my question is, how important is it for the Palestinian state that the US government take a more pro-Palestinian stand than today? Can the Palestinian state stand tall without US support? Could other countries or organizations replace the US and play a decisive role in the development of the Palestinian state?
First of all, I would like to say that we have very, very good relations with the US. Of course, we realize, and everybody realizes, that they have been they have not been balanced when it comes to the Palestinian cause and to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. They have taken Israel's side. I mean, various consecutive U.S. administrations, and they have. We've had them as a broker for peace. But I'm sorry to say that they were not balanced. They tended to adopt one side of the conflict, which was always consistently the Israeli side. Right now, the Congress decided to suspend part of the aid that is usually the financial aid that is usually dedicated for Palestine. And as far as the American or the US presidents are concerned, this has been the story of our lives regarding the election. I'm referring to the election campaign. If it's a year of election campaign, then the president has no time for us. If it's his first year in office, then wow, he has so much to talk about and he doesn't want to burn his ships on the first year. Okay, second year, there comes the mid-term Congress elections, so it's not so wise to, to have the Congress go against the president. The fourth year, well, is a lame duck. It has been the story of our lives with the American administrations. This is sad. And we do not want to do this without them. I mean, it's not a matter of, being able to be there without them or with them. The fact of the matter is that the USA is a superpower. This cannot be ignored. And what they have been doing lately was pressure all the countries in order not to give their votes for Palestine. And we know that, and it has been public and announced. That's apart from the fact that they have put tremendous pressure on our leadership in order not to apply for UN. In spite of this pressure, we did what we felt was right and timely, and that's how it is. So what we want is, we want us to be to continue to be friends with the Americans. We need them to help us with Israel and with this. Ultimately, there's going to be negotiations, and there has been times at the beginning of the Obama administration where all the facts were acknowledged and settlements were talked about as an impediment for peace, and that they should stop, Israel should stop building settlements because it is prejudicing the outcome of negotiations, and all the right things were said. However, a year later, all the wrong things were said and done. So it is it's an ongoing, for us, it's an ongoing struggle to win over more friends, to win over more understanding and more fairness towards our cause and towards our people. And nobody is saying occupation is correct. We are the last nation under occupation on the face of this earth. And I don't think it rings well when you say military occupation. In the year 2011, I don't think anyone dare say that, oh, it's okay. But, so it is, as I said, an ongoing process. Of course, the EU can play a role, and they are playing a role, and we want them, we always said that we want them to be players and not just payers. And a lot of work is being done, and we have a long path ahead of us, and we're on it.
We are two of us here, Anja Emsheimer to my right, and I'm Ilan Cohen, and we are members of the board of a small organization called Jews for Israeli-Palestinian Peace. So before putting the question, I would like to express our appreciation as an alternative Jewish voice, so to say, at your presence, and the upgrading of the representation of the authority, of Palestinian Authority to an ambassador degree, because we are convinced that the only solution along the line are two states side by side. Now to my question. Sweden has so to say spoken with two voices. On the one hand side, your recognition as an ambassador. On the other hand, the negative vote for the UNESCO.
As far as the first question is concerned regarding the position of, or the voting of Sweden at the UNESCO, they have explained it as being a matter of procedure, or better say, I will explain what is meant by that. They said that they thought the timing and the procedure was not right. They believe, now I'm giving their explanation officially. They believe that we should have waited for the application for UN membership first, and especially that UNESCO is not a political entity. It is, of course, it takes care of culture and education, etc. And for this reason, they voted against. And that this has nothing to do with, and it will not mean that their position, their support, and their political position has changed. It has not changed in any form or shape. Now, of course, for us, we have applied for UNESCO specifically because it is UNESCO. We need to preserve our cultural heritage, our identity, in the occupied Palestinian territory because it is under threat and because we think that by being a member we can do this better. And now that we are member, I believe that this means that our right or our status as a state is unrefutable. What remains is for this fact to become a reality, or rather for this fact to become legally on the ground by getting rid of occupation, etc., and all of the rest. But our existence as a state is not refutable. I mean, no one argues after this majority that we got that we are a state. So, I do believe that Sweden might have, maybe they could have chosen, in my book, they could have chosen abstention, but they thought that their reasoning, that this is a matter of procedure and that we should have dedicated our efforts to the question of membership first, and then this would have come automatically, led them to the no vote. And we were very, very surprised by that, to be honest with you.
Who are we?
Yes. Yeah, but let me tell you something. This will not affect, not just as we were assured that this will not affect their position regarding, or Sweden's position regarding our rights and our cause and our, the support. We, on our side, we feel, okay, there are differences of opinion sometimes among friends. So we treat this matter in that way. This is how we perceive it. I see smiles.
But the second question about the procedure.
Yes. Well, the second question regarding the procedure. Yesterday, there was a report given by the admission committee after so many sessions to study the application, and it was the report said that there was not agreement on the matter. So it was also said that according to what I've seen from the discussions, it is unfortunate that some arguments were brought up that have nothing to do with the way usually applied when studying an application of that sort. There are certain criteria, and there are certain, they call it rules of procedure. So other elements were introduced, and other political elements were introduced. So in that case, we feel that it is unfortunate that this matter was dealt with not according to strictly the rules of procedure, and that's why they could not reach an agreement, or that's how it is, they could not reach an agreement. So the next step, I believe you also wanted to know what will happen next. We have many options. In principle, we have the right to get to go back to the Security Council or to apply again as many times as we want. I think it's limited to 14 or 15, I don't know, but I know for sure that there is one country that applied 14 times before they were able to get membership. Israel itself applied, I think, 9 times. So, in principle, we have the right to do that. And there are other options, but right now it will be studied, and we will choose the best way to proceed. But there is no going back on this.
What happens next on the ground? Whatever happens in the Security Council, the General Assembly, like you say, it's not going to end the occupation. It's not going to end Israel's continued settlement building, and therefore it's not going to create a climate where meaningful negotiations are possible, though it's clear that Palestine has scored some major diplomatic victories just by making this application. But in terms of actually achieving independence, what do you see as the next step? Is there any scope for return to negotiations? Is there do you see mass non-violent resistance to the occupation as the way forward, or what is the next step on the ground?
I think there will not be just one step. We will pursue all avenues, diplomatic and of course non-violent resistance, and we are doing this. We have been doing this, especially against the wall and against the annexation of land and confiscation of homes, etc. It's been going on, and it will continue. And at the same time, we will continue to be ready, although the whole world has testified and commended us for our state building and our institutions that are ready for us to become an independent state. As a matter of fact, I've heard a comment once that goes that many countries, most countries on the eve of their independence were not half as ready as we are. So what do we do? Again, to get back to this, as I said, we will pursue all these avenues, the diplomatic, the non-violent resistance, as well as there's going to be a visit by the quartet on Monday as a follow-up to the statement they have issued on the 23rd of September, whereby they put forward the terms of reference for getting back to negotiations. We have accepted, because this is what we've been asking for, that we want to go back to negotiations, but on clear terms of reference. And so they are, and we want to start with the borders and security, and of course Israel has not responded yet, except by announcing more settlements and more settlements on the same day that statement has, on the day that statement came out. However, there's going to be separate meetings with the Israeli side and our side with the quartet to see what each side has to say. I would add from my part that if there is a bit of fairness and even-handedness, it is time now that the quartet announces who is the one that is hindering any going back to negotiations. Who is the one that is not accepting the terms of reference that are agreed upon by the whole world? I think it is, we have reached the moment of truth, and with a measure of even-handedness, this should be very clear. And we have no choice but to go on using these avenues that we have chosen and that are the only way in order to establish peace and stability in the region, and I think that peace and stability in our region would reflect on the whole world. And I don't think I'm exaggerating, especially when we think of the tremendous changes that have been taking place around Palestine in all of the Arab countries where change has happened and where change is happening. And I would add Israel to those, and I know that there were tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands on the streets on different occasions. And maybe this atmosphere, both in Israel and around Israel, would prod the Israeli people to think more for the future and to realize that it is in our interest as Palestinians and in the Israeli interest and for the future of both of our nations to have this occupation end. It is in both of our interests, and so that we can live in peace together, side by side.
I think we need to also have an internal united front. So what is being done about that? I mean, we know how the situation is between the West Bank and Gaza.
Yeah.
So is there something happening really on the ground?
Yes.
Thank you.
I left this actually so that someone can ask me the question, so that I can say with pleasure that there is a lot being done and there are serious steps. Of course, there has been talks and there is a realization, which I think is the important thing. There is a realization that we need to get our internal politics on the right track, and for this reason we do need to become more unified and practically take the steps that are needed in order for us to be able to have elections soon. And because there was, even in the committee, which our friend here asked about, someone brought up the matter that, there is this split between Hamas and, of course, this is not exactly true, because the one that applied for membership is the PLO, and the PLO is the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. And I, for one, I represent the president, who is the head of the PLO. And so, I mean, it is an argument. This split or these differences are being used against us. And we do realize, and there is going to be very soon practical steps in order to not just go and not just to have a government that takes over the preparation for elections, but also to discuss the whole political system and how this political system should function better and how it should be reformed and how elections are needed in other bodies of the PLO in order to incorporate and encompass all the political elements that we are proud to have within our system. And we often ask our friends in this country and in other countries, well, we are going to have this reconciliation and what everybody is calling reconciliation, and we are going to have this change in our political system, and later on elections or soon after elections. But please tell us you won't be punishing us for it again. I mean, we had our elections and we celebrated, the West, celebrated our democracy and observed it and then punished us for it. And then I get the answer. I always hear and elsewhere that everyone realized it was a huge mistake to impose the boycott and then later on the siege. And by the way, the siege on Gaza was done under the pretext of Gilad Shalit. And now Gilad Shalit is happy in the arms of his family, and we are happy to have, around 500, and we are waiting for the rest. But the siege is still there. So, I mean, there is a realization, as I said, I repeat, that this should be done. It's an urgent matter, and I know that there are steps in the near future that will take place. And I'm happy, actually, to say it and to let you know. I will tell you, we are all human beings, and we should respect each other. And it's not about religion. What is there is colonialism, pure and simple. It is not about religion. With religion, there are no differences. Those noble values are noble values for everyone.
My last question is, what is the most important thing that we as individuals can do here in Sweden to support the Palestinian people?
I would say continue doing what you are doing, and continue bringing more awareness to the communities where you live, where you work. I would say that the realities on the ground in Palestine are so telling that I would encourage visits to Palestine. I would encourage even tourism. Go and see Bethlehem, go and see Hebron, go and see East Jerusalem, and the rest of our beautiful cities, whether it's religious pilgrimage or tourism just for fun, you have all of that. At the same time, you can see the harsh realities, and like the wall and the settlements, and understand a little bit more, and then come back and tell your other friends and your community all about it. And awareness is important so that a public opinion is formed. I know that the public opinion in Sweden is very informed, but I would say let us continue doing what we are doing, and bring more solidarity to the Palestinian people. And I want you all to know that our people do appreciate tremendously, and they have this special warm feelings towards Sweden because also of the people they have met and worked with, because of all the projects that are being implemented in Palestine on behalf of the Swedish people. And they, believe me, they have been following, and they know that here they have true support and true feelings of solidarity, and even warm feelings, some cariño, as they say in Spanish. It doesn't have an equivalent in English, but I would say liking and some warm feelings. If that was the last question, I would like to thank you again for coming and staying and listening, and I hope to have other occasions. Thank you very much for having that.